our guest today, Alka Joshi. So happy to have her as part of this series. It's such a great story, such a great book that she's written. And I love the fact that it's kind of an alternative history of her late mother's story, a reimagining if things had turned out differently. I know that it's been a strange time to release a book.
Yes.
For sure. I know that it all kind of came together when you were releasing it right about the time that the pandemic started. And it was kind of a hard journey in the beginning, you know, ending up with Reese Witherspoon recommending it and it becoming a bestseller, which I'm sure you're going to talk about that journey. But it's a fantastic book, so evocative, so well constructed, and really brings to mind an environment that none of us were a part of, but yet it feels easy to imagine being there. And I just so thankful to have Alka Joshi with us today. And yeah, whatever you'd like to speak about, we're here to listen to you. So thanks again for being here.
Hey, I want to give a shout out to Paul. Hi, Paul. I haven't seen you in all these years since leaving Stanford.
And just kind of an eccentricity here with Zoom is that everybody's muted from the beginning. When we do come to question and answer time, I'm going to say like, we're going to do something with raising hands, which I'll teach you how to do that, just so we can be a little more organized with everything. But yeah, for right now, everyone's muted, so they can hear you.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll talk a little bit about my journey. In 2008, I was 51 years old, and the mortgage crisis hit, and everybody lost their homes and their jobs, and you know, a lot of things happened. And for me and my advertising agency that I'd been running for 20 years, I lost a bunch of projects because advertising and marketing budgets are the first things to get slashed when businesses start going south. So I thought, well, what am I going to do? My husband had been encouraging me to take writing classes. And I'd been doing that for a little while, like in the evenings, I was taking some writing workshops. What he said is that he thought I could actually write literary fiction. And I had sort of poo-pooed the idea because I thought, oh, no, you know, I write advertising. So I write a commercial for a minute. I write a radio spot that lasts a half a minute. I don't really write literary fiction. And he said, no, I think you've got something there. So then when 2008 hit, I thought, okay, you know what I could do? I could go back to school, which a lot of people do during a recession. And I could probably become a writer. So I joined an MFA program in creative writing. And I studied with some fantastic people, a few who had been to Stanford in the writing program at Stanford. And I had the opportunity at the same time that I was working on my MFA to travel back and forth to Jaipur with my mother so many times because my younger brother had bought a condo in Jaipur and he had done it specifically for my parents so that they could go back and forth in their later years because they wanted to connect with family and friends. And I was taking my mother back and forth. And I would leave her there for periods of time because she wanted to stay longer. Then I would come back in between my semester breaks and come spend time with her. And during the time that I spent with her, I got to know my mother's girlhood. I got to know what she liked to eat when she was a kid. I got to know who her friends were, what they liked to play, the books that she liked to read, and the films that she loved. And I watched a bunch of those films with her. And we scoured the bookstores for some of those books that she liked and the magazines that she liked to read. And, you know, we went to the Jaipur Palace and she told me about the time that she had met with the younger Maharani there. And, you know, my dad would tell me about all of the things that were happening in India in the 1950s. He was a young engineer and he was helping build the infrastructure of the roads and the dams and the bridges. So I got a lot of this wonderful feedback from both of them about what life was like in 1950s India. And, you know, I just started reimagining a life for my mother. my dad always got to do everything he wanted to do, right? Because he was a male, and that's what males get to do in patriarchal societies. But my mother didn't get to do all the things I think she would have liked to do. For example, she would have liked to have kept studying psychology in school, in college, but she was taken out to get arranged in a marriage to my dad. So I thought, what would life have been like if my mom could have left the marriage? What would she have done? How would she have survived? How would she have interacted with people? And that is where the Henna Artist was born. So the Henna Artist became my thesis for my MFA program. And my mother was there at my thesis reading, and I got to introduce her as my muse, which was really fun. So, you know, unexpectedly though, 8 months after my thesis reading, my mother died, and I was still working on refining the book, but I couldn't come back to it for a while until my mentor, I think, probably called me one day and said, "Hey, how's that book coming along?" And I said, "Well, you know, not so good, blah, blah, blah." But she said, "Please go back to it. You know, it deserves some more attention." So I started to work on it again. And then she helped me get the book to her agent once she felt that it was strong enough where it, you know, her agent could read it. And her agent called me right away and said, "Yes, I love this book. I love these characters. I want to represent you." And so I said, "Oh, great. Are we ready to be published?" And she said, "Oh, gosh, no, you've got a lot of work to do." So then for the next 4 years, she starts telling me about how to develop the characters, or maybe there's a couple of characters that I really need to eliminate, or some scenes that I could make stronger. And I work with her on that. And then after 4 years, I go, "Okay, are we ready now to get it published?" And she said, "Oh gosh, no, now you need an actual book editor." And I said, "What's a book editor?" And she said, "Those are the people who will go over your whole book. They will give you a lot of feedback on how to make your book a lot stronger." I said, "I thought that's what we were doing." And she said, "I'm just a literary agent. I'm not a book editor." So I said, "Okay." So I find a book editor. The book editor gives me 12 pages of comments, 12 pages. And I think, "Oh my God, I thought I was almost to the finish line. I wasn't." So then I work on her changes and I send that back to my agent. And I say, "Okay, now can we get it published?" And my agent said, "Well, I have a couple more things I think you could really work on." I said, "Emma, I've been working on this for 9 years. I don't think I can work anymore on this. I don't think I can do anymore." And she said, "Okay, calm down." And so she sold it to HarperCollins. And then I get an editor at HarperCollins, and she has another set of changes for me, and I'm working on those for another 1.5 years. So I get all of those done, and then we have the release date set for March the 3rd. And then the pandemic hits. I just feel like my whole life was like, and then. So bookstores closed down, the libraries closed down. As HarperCollins has done a great job of pre-selling the book because they had always expected this to be a big book for them, especially with book clubs. And that's why they had me do the Q&A in the back and the recipes and all these other additional points. And so, you know, nobody can get the book, and I just put my head under the covers, and I didn't want to come back out again because I just thought, what kind of karma am I carrying around that I can't even get this book out into the hands of readers after 10 years of working on it. And then Reese Witherspoon's people called. And once again, we had new life in the book, and she really changed everything around for us. By the time she introduced the book as her book pick for May 1st, bookstores had started to open, libraries had started to get the book. And so it really put the name out there in a really big way. She's the only person out there who is really promoting female authored books that have really strong female characters, which, you know, I cannot thank her enough for. We female authors really need that kind of promotion. We need that kind of visibility, and she gave it to us. So that is my 10-year journey to publication, and to then hitting all of the bestseller lists after that. And then we started getting calls for screen adaptation of the novel. And I always envisioned that if this would be a screen adaptation, it would be an episodic TV series. So it would be streamed, you know, on Netflix or Hulu or something like that, because I am a binge watcher. And I don't know how many of you guys are, but I love episodic series. I cannot help myself. I always think I'm going to limit myself to 1 or 2 per day. but I can't. Like, I just go, okay, maybe I'll watch one more. Maybe I'll watch one more. So I want this to be one of those bingeable series. And the executive producers and the team that I eventually went with have that in their minds. And the way that they're penning it is to call it the Indian Downton Abbey. So they want it to be as lush as it appears on paper. And they're going to go to Jaipur to film all of it. So that is in the works, and that's really fun. So I can talk a little bit about that too. So now what I'd like to do is just to ask if any of you guys have any questions. You can go to the chat function down below and ask a question, or you can unvideo yourself or re-video yourself and ask me a question, or you can raise a hand or whatever. So let me start. Let's start with Christine, because I know you're probably going to have a question for me, Christine.
Yes, you're absolutely right. So thank you so much for doing this, Alka. I love the Henna Artist. I just thought everything just came to life so vividly. So thank you so much. India obviously has a very long and rich history. So how did you select the time period of the 50s to set the novel?
I think that part of the reason, and I don't even think I knew this at the time that I first started to write the book, I was born in the 1950s. And we came to America in 1967. And as a young immigrant, what I saw in the history books that I opened in America that talked about India were all of these photos of really poor people, emaciated cows, a lot of farmers. And that isn't the India that I came from. I came from a literate India. I came from a place where, my mom and dad are actually helping rebuild this whole country that has been under British domination for 300 years. I came from a country where, I wore a starched uniform to school, and I was taught by Christian nuns because they spoke English, and my father wanted to make sure that we would always speak English from day one. So I had a hard time reconciling the India of my childhood with the India that I saw in history books and the India that people kept asking me about. Even adults would ask me things in Iowa, which is where my father was getting his doctorate, the whole reason that we came to America. So in Ames, Iowa, people would ask me questions like, hey, where did you learn English? And do you know how to use a knife and fork? And do you sleep on the ground, or do you sleep in a bed? And I could not understand at the age of 9, 10, 11, what those questions were all about. So I think what I really wanted to do in this novel was to correct the misperception that America had about India. I wanted to talk about the India I came from, the India I know, the beautiful India, the proud India, the graceful India, the India that has all these amazing crafts like henna art that's been going on for 5,000 years, like meditation, like the craft of jewelry making and textile making and print blocking, and the spices and the herbal remedies, all these things that all the conquerors and invaders over millennia have tried to, and mostly been successful in divesting India of. I wanted to talk about that India, how beautiful India can be.
Thank you so much, Alka. And I do have a couple questions that people have written in the chat function at the bottom. I just want to reiterate the fact that if you do want to ask a question, or if you'd like me to ask your question, you can put it in the chat window at the bottom of your Zoom window by clicking chat and writing it there. If you'd like to ask a question, click the participants button and then click the raise your hand button. Hopefully I get the chance to ask a question a little bit later. And I also wanted to say, I'm so glad that your karma resulted in the book getting on Reese's list and becoming a hit from there. And I can't wait to see the episodic TV series. I also am a binge watcher and can't wait for that.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah. It's going to be great on TV, exactly the lusciousness that you mentioned. Katie asked, she said, first of all, hi, I absolutely loved the Henna Artist. And then she asked, Can you please talk a bit more about some of the changes the various editors asked you to make along the way, and what did you think of those changes that they requested?
Sure. One of the biggest changes was something my agent had me work on for those first couple of years. She said that when you have a novel with two voices, and originally I had Lakshmi's voice in the first person and Radha's voice in the first person in alternating chapters. And she said, when you do that, you really need to have both characters who are equally compelling. You cannot have one who is stronger than the other. And she said, right now, your Lakshmi character is so much stronger. Like, you know Lakshmi backwards and forwards, but you don't know Radha very well. And so those chapters come out weaker and we lose interest in them. So she said, you have two choices. You can either boost up the Radha chapters, boost up her personality and her character, or you can get rid of her altogether. And, you know, asking a writer to eliminate their chapters or their pages is like asking them to cut off a finger or an arm. And I don't think any writer likes doing that kind of thing. So what I decided to do was to try to make Radha stronger. I did not succeed. And Emma finally had to tell me, my agent finally had to tell me, okay, you really need to go back and take a look at how to eliminate the Radha chapters. And I had to cut 140 pages out of the book. That was really hard. But number one, it trimmed the story down, which was great. You know, it made it a lot more compressed. And then the other thing was that I had explained so much in the Radha chapters that we lost a lot of backstory about how she met up with Ravi and how all of that stuff happened. But in a way, it was kind of good that we lost that, because we don't really know in the book how all of that got started until it actually happens, until we actually find out that she's pregnant. So sorry for the spoiler in case you haven't read the book. So that was one major change. Another major change is towards the end, my editor at HarperCollins had me make, and that was in Hari's trajectory. So Hari is this guy who is young and immature, and he takes his frustrations out on Lakshmi, and he finds out eventually that she's been keeping herself childless on purpose, and that really makes him mad. So he had to, you know, in my original drafts, he had to go up and join the Indian army up in the north, and he had to just die because I didn't like him. And so Kathy, my editor, said, Alka, you can't do this. You have every other character in the novel that has a real personality. They feel three-dimensional. I really need for you to work on Hari so that he is not just a hateful person. You really need to make him a three-dimensional person. So I said, Kathy, I don't want to. And she said, just try it. So I did. And I think it was one of the best pieces of advice I got, because then I started investing some time in how Hari could have changed once Lakshmi left. Once Lakshmi left, I think he was able to be more with his mother. He had to do more for his mother. He had to go harvest those plants that she needed for her remedies. And I think through that, he would have eventually started doing more of her work. And when she got sick and died, I think he would have taken over her practice. So in that way, I think he would have developed a, you know, a sympathy and an empathy for these women. And I think that's eventually what does happen in the final version of the novel. And because of that, at the very end, Lakshmi was supposed to be saying goodbye to Samir at the railroad station when she leaves for Shimla. But really what happened after I went through the whole book again, changing Hari's trajectory, is I thought at the very end, you cannot have her saying goodbye to Samir. Samir has shown his true colors, and he is not all that, right? He has turned out to betray her by not standing by her when she really needed him to help with Radha's pregnancy. So what she really needed to say goodbye to, I think, in that instance, is the relationship with Hari. So that's when I then inserted Hari on the platform instead of Samir, and Hari ends up being the one who is saying goodbye to her. And they're saying goodbye to each other, to that failed relationship, to all of the, you know, the hurt, the embarrassment, the humiliation that they have caused each other. So those are, two of the major changes that happened in the book. And I have tons of pages that did not make it into the book, which is why I wrote a sequel, because there's so many pages that didn't make it in, where I knew what was going to happen ultimately with these characters, what was going to happen 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line. And so, I ended up writing 2 sequels. So, it's good. It's good that you don't get to put everything in the first book, because then you can harness it for your subsequent novels. So thank you for your question.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And it actually brought to mind for me a couple additional questions. The editor's note to focus more on Radha and her story, did that lead you to making her story the first one that we hear in the prologue, or was that already part of your overall strategy in writing?
No, that actually was the first Radha's chapter. And I did want to insert her in there somehow. I didn't want to lose all those chapters. So yes, I did use that very first part of her chapter 1 as the prologue. Yeah. Because I wanted us to understand, I wanted the reader to understand where she comes from, what her village is like, why she is the bad luck girl, why she is looking for Lakshmi all of these years. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I'm not sure if the raising the hand feature is working, but I'd like to invite anybody to unmute yourselves and ask a question. I'm sure many people have questions. If not, I have ones prepared, but I'd like to hear from our group.
Katie, do you have a question for me? I'm just calling on people.
I have a question.
Oh, sure.
I'm sorry. It's interesting. I tried to get your book. It's like from the library. There's a huge list of people waiting for it. The print, the online, anything. And
oh, really?
I was really impressed. So thank you I was surprised, but I haven't read it. And what I wanted to ask you is, why do you think that is? Why do you think everybody wants to really read it?
I have been pleasantly surprised. I thought I was writing about women in India in the 1950s. It turns out I'm writing about women all over the world, because they are contacting me from all over the world. I have had women from Chile in book clubs. I have had women from Spain, from Pakistan, from Canada, from the UK, from Australia, from New Zealand, from France. All these women want to talk about the women in the book, because they tell me their culture is very similar also. And I think what this says to me is a couple of things. One is that, how the first line of the first chapter is independence changed everything and independence changed nothing. I think that independence changed a lot for maybe the Indian infrastructure and how India was going to run their Congress and their policies, but it really didn't change anything for the women. And I think that has been true throughout the world. I think women have made so many strides, but they are still not at the place where they would like to be. So that's what these women are telling me. They see themselves in one of the characters in the book. They see themselves as somebody who might have 100% agency if they had been raised a little differently or raised in slightly different society, but they still do not have that. I was in a book club with young physicians the other day. And when I say young, everybody to me is young because I'm 62. So let's see, I think they were in their mid-30s. And they're all female physicians working in New York. And they told me, they said, sexism is alive and well, Alka. It has not gone away. We are constantly being mistaken for nurses. We are constantly being told to get a bedpan. And, people diss us in favor of like a male resident who comes in and says something. Here we are, bona fide doctors. So I think that this is one reason why the women in the book are trying to find agency in the limited lives that they have been given. And I think women all over the world can relate to that. Even today, they can relate to that, and they can relate to it no matter what their circumstance in life has been. They can also relate to the fact that maybe this is their mother's life or their grandmother's life, and they feel a little bit closer to their mothers or their grandmothers as a result of reading a book like this. I've had a lot of mother-daughter combinations who have been reading the book for that reason, because I think it's a way for a daughter to say, Mom, was this life like for you? You know, in the 1950s, is that what it was like for you? And, you know, a lot of women tell me, yeah, it really was. So I think that's one of the reasons why. The other, you know, one of the other things I wanted to say is, as an author, I learned all about audiobooks. I had not listened to audiobooks before. And when HarperCollins sent me 5 audition tapes of the narrators they were thinking of narrating the Henna Artist, I listened to them all and I thought, not quite. So I went on audio, what's it called? Audible. I went on Audible and I looked at, or I listened to the first 5 minutes, which you can for free of almost any book. And I listened to a whole bunch of them that were written by Indian authors like A Suitable Boy or Mistress of Spices or The God of Small Things. And this one woman's name kept coming up as the narrator, Sneha Mathan. And I said to Harper Audio, would you please have her audition? So she did. Then Sneha called me and she said, let's go over the entire glossary because she's from a different part of India than I'm from, so we pronounce things differently. So we went through the entire glossary and we went over how she was going to pronounce different things. And then we went through every character and she said, do you want Samir to have a British English or an American English or boarding school English, all of that. And she got all of those characters right. So one of the other things that's happened is the popularity of the audiobook is all due to Sneha. She did an amazing job on that audiobook, on the narration. And she's, I think, the reason why we also made the New York Times bestseller list for audiobooks. So, you know, I think that's one of the reasons why the audiobook is always checked out too.
So how do you feel about Frida Pinto?
Oh, I'm so excited. You know, I chose Frida. She came as part of that particular package because she was so thoughtful every time I asked her a question or I had a conversation with her about a character. She has really considered many aspects of this book and figured out the best way that we can bring out the authenticity of India, but also for a Western sensibility. So yeah, I'm really excited about, I think she's going to be a beautiful Lakshmi. So.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Do we have any more questions? I know people must have them.
Oh, Katie has another.
Sorry. I was a few minutes late, so I apologize if you already talked about this, but can you talk a little bit about how much of your writing was from your own experiences and memories and how much was, you know, your own research, new research and reporting? Because one thing that struck me as a reader was it was so vivid and so detailed, and I felt like, even though I've never been to India, I feel like I've been there now. And I'm curious how you did that.
Well, you know, Katie, you're actually helping me answer the last question that was asked a little bit too. I think one of the other reasons why everybody is reading the book is because it helps them travel. I think that when I didn't really, you know, even think about this until people started telling me, it helps them feel like they're actually traveling to India when they read this book. So I think it's an escape. It's a wonderful escape. So how much of it is my life? I think that some of it is my life. Some of it is what I remember. Definitely the smells and the sounds and the tastes of India. India is such a sensory place. Once you go there, you never can get it out of your imagination. It is just seared in your memory. All of those smells of curry and the vegetation everywhere, and you know, the aroma of all of the fruit and flowers. And then, of course, there are colors everywhere. No two women wear the same sari. The patterns are all different. I think you just never, India is not something you can ever leave behind. So a lot of that is just seared in my memory. And because I've been in advertising and marketing my whole life, I'm able to describe things easily. You know, that's sort of been my bailiwick for 30 years. The parts of India that are my mother's and father's, I've incorporated in there because they really helped round out what my memory was of India. And then, of course, I did a lot of research on the herbal remedies. When you grow up as an Indian, you already work with a lot of spices naturally. You work with the spices like turmeric and cumin and what's coriander and mustard seeds and things like that, just in your regular cooking. And you understand as an Indian that all of those spices are in there, not only to make things taste good, but because they actually help your body. They help your lymphatic system. They help your digestive system. They help your skin, you know, all of that kind of thing. And then everything we put in chai, the cardamom, the cinnamon, those are all meant to calm you down and help you feel more joyous. So I think that as an Indian, you already have some sort of an innate knowledge about herbs and how you use them. And I remember my mother putting turmeric on our hurts when we hurt ourselves when we were little kids. My dad still to this day, he's 88 years old, and he drinks a glass of warm milk with turmeric and a little bit of honey every night. And that is for his joints. I think I supplemented that with a lot of herbal research. And then I talked to a lot of people in India every time I went to visit. I would talk to Rajput families and the Patels, who are the merchant class family. And, I would talk to a lot of Brahmins. I would talk to my own family and other people that I met. I read books, lots and lots of fiction that has been written by Indians all of these years. R.K. Narayan is a great storyteller from the 1940s in India. And of course, Rabindranath Tagore is an amazing writer from that period. I watched the movies of Satyajit Ray. I watched a lot of the other films that were made around the 1950s, including a film called Mr. and Mrs. 55, which was to educate Indians about the Divorce Act that had just been passed. So it was the first year that it became legal for Indians to divorce. And I wanted Lakshmi to stop hiding after 13 years of pretending that her husband had deserted her. I wanted her to be able to get a genuine divorce and, have clean divorce from that relationship. So what else did I do? The younger Maharani is based on a real person, the Maharani Gayatri Devi of Jaipur, whom my mother met one time. And she wrote a book called A Princess Remembers. So that gave me a lot of great background on what a palace life was like, what her particular life was like, what it was like for her as a very well-educated, westernized Indian woman who started her own school, which still exists today, the Maharani Gayatri Devi School, and where families send their young girls from all over India. It's a very prestigious school. And she started that because she wanted girls to have a seat at the global table, to be able to talk about politics and economics and be able to speak English well all throughout the world. So does that help answer your question?
It does. Thanks so much.
Sure, you're welcome. Mark, do you have a question for me? Are you unmuted?
Yeah, Mark, I think you're muted still. Alka, are you seeing these people raising their hands, or are you just calling on people?
No, I'm just calling on people. My parents have a picture of me when I was a little kid. It's a little black and white picture. And I must be 3 and my younger brother is 2, and we're sitting on the ground and I am teaching him. They said I was always teaching him things. So I'm like a teacher. This is why I'm calling on people. And so I think I've always had that in me. And I would always get out a notebook. And even when I didn't know how to write, I would be teaching him how to write as if I knew what I was doing.
Well, Mark,
Madeline,
Mark, do you have a question? Or Madeline?
Does Madeline have a question for me? Yeah, she does.
I,
Hi.
you know what? I want to get on, and similar to the, I think it was Lorna, I have not read the book because I haven't been able to get it from the library yet. But I wanted to participate in this, and because I was really excited that, you know, that you were going to be here. And so I'm going to read the book, and I'm really sad that I don't have the book under my belt right now, because I know I'm going to have a million questions. So.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, the paperback version of the book does get printed next, it gets released next April. So you'll have an opportunity to get a paperback version at that time. And we have already gone into a second printing on the hardcover, which is why I think the libraries don't have enough of them. So yeah, so tell your library, go order some more books.
Well.
Well, could you talk a little bit more about some of the herbs? Because I did think that was really fascinating, actually. The whole, I mean, just right as a contraceptive, as a anti-contraceptive. I mean, like, how much is that all? Is that all based on real herbs, or how much?
Yeah,
did you take?
yeah. I think that throughout the centuries, what I found is that throughout the centuries, in almost every culture, there have been herbal remedies for getting rid of unwanted pregnancies. So, you know, I recently read a book taking place in Poland in the 1940s, and the women are chewing wild carrot seeds in order to abort. And then I read another book taking place in Vietnam in the 1970s, and they're using this really pungent smelling herb to do the same thing. None of these things are ever good tasting, but they, I guess, you know, have the effect of releasing the egg. So throughout the centuries, so many kind of remedies, I think, have been used for that. And the cotton root bark was something that I found that was being used in India at this time. You know, even today, in India, there is a big problem with the male and female births. And so you've got girl babies that have feticide committed against them in large numbers. So usually in the world, there are more girls born than boys, right? So the ratio is always like 48 to 52, something like that. In India, it's the reverse because of all the feticide. Hey, Dad, there's my dad. So, you know, because of all the feticide, you know, it got to be such a problem that the Indian government had to actually tell doctors that they were going to be fined if they started revealing the gender, if they kept revealing the gender of the child to the parents. And the reason that parents would rather have a boy than a girl is because a boy is going to receive dowry at the marriage time, and he will take care of parents. A girl is only seen as a seat at the table at dinner, who is just eating all the food, and then at the end, they have to give money for her to be taken up by another family. So, so she's seen as a liability, and a boy is seen as an asset. I just read in the paper the other day, you know, these are kind of sensational stories. They don't happen all the time, but it kind of shocked me that there was a woman whose child was ripped out of her, or at least her husband tried to do that, because they had had 5 daughters, and he kept saying, I want a son, as if she could do something about it, right? So she was having another daughter, they found out. And so he actually, you know, took a knife and just tried to get the baby out. You know, the baby died, it was stillborn. But that is like an extreme example of how much this whole system of favoring boys over girls affects India, affects families.
Yeah, and of course, as we know, the birth sex of the baby is determined by the father's contribution, not the mother's.
Is that right? I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, the mother always gives an X chromosome because she has 2 X chromosomes. The father's sperm are half X and half Y. So it's determined by which sperm reaches the egg. Um, I was a biology major at Stanford. Maybe that's
Oh.
why I knew that. You went to Stanford as an art history major.
Yeah.
And I think I don't want to interrupt the flow of the conversation, but I would be remiss because this is part of the Stanford alumni group. If I didn't ask a question, at least about, how you think your time at Stanford, if at all, kind of affected your career as a writer, and any part of this story.
Well, I think that Stanford education is an amazing, amazing entree into anything you want to do in your life. So what I found is that Stanford education opened up a lot of doors for me. I loved my time there. I loved being in the dorms. I loved, late night chats with people. That was really fun. And what I wish I had done that I would tell new graduates to do is use the network more, because I think the Alumni Association is such a powerful group. And if you can, find somebody to mentor you within that group, or find somebody to help you get to the new place, that would be really amazing. When I first went into advertising, I didn't know a soul. We didn't have family in the business. We didn't have any connections. But if I had just gone to the Stanford Alumni Association, I'm sure I could have found a lot of people who would have said, hey, yeah, why don't you come and, interview with us? So I think that it's an amazing school. I think it has even risen in stature since I was there 45 years ago. It's an amazing, oh my God, that's so weird to say I was there 45 years ago. That is so bizarre. That just feels so wrong.
It's certainly changed a lot since then. It's changed a lot even since I left. And thank you for the plug, by the way, for the Alumni Association and the clubs that we have around the country, including here in New York. We do try to do stuff that's, going to help people when they're new alumni or have been around in New York for a long time. Couple things from the chat that I just wanted to read. Anita said, I love the teaching anecdote. I think that was earlier when you were calling on people, even if they didn't necessarily raise their hand. I would be scared if you did that, by the way. I would have been, maybe I would have left as soon as you did that. Mark said he had to go. He wanted to congratulate you on your success. And then Gloria had a question. She said, I would like to be clear on why the younger sister was so hard on her sister when she loved her older sister so.
I think that when Radha comes into Lakshmi's life, Lakshmi is thinking, okay, this girl, she needs some discipline. She needs a structure. This is what helped me get accepted into society. So I'm going to teach her all of those things. And she starts with those rules, rule 1, rule 2, rule 3, rule 23. And what Radha is looking for is an older sister. She wants to be able to have tea with her sister. She wants to go to the movies. She wants to talk about boys. She wants to talk about books. And so Lakshmi forgets that this is or she doesn't realize that this is really what Radha needs right now. She wants a sister. So she tries to be a mother to Radha. And Radha then retaliates by saying, look, I spent so much of my energy and my brain power trying to get to you 800 miles away. I found a way to get to you. Why don't you give me some respect and some acknowledgement for that, instead of trying to sort of co-opt me and become you. I am not you, I am me. So I think that is one of the things that's going on. I think, Lakshmi has this very structured life. She keeps her head down. She's got her things that have worked for her, and she wants to stay within that structure. you know, one of the things I wanted to portray in Radha is that she is a 13-year-old girl who hasn't had a lot of structure in her life. And in a way, what that's done is it's left her very clean and fresh, so that none of her ideas have yet been moderated. She has not had anybody tell her, you can't be this, you can't be that. Her parents checked out so long ago that they really weren't keeping tabs on her. She was teaching herself how to read, and when her father was too drunk, she had to go and teach the school. And by the way, her father is nothing like my father, who is here. And my father's neither a drunk nor a wife beater. My father is a college professor. So, so anyway, I wanted Radha to have this kind of purity about her where, you know, it's the way that I think all of us women are when we're girls. We have a certain idea of self. We know what we want. We know whether we want to be married, whether we want to have children, whether we want to pass all of them or just one, whether we want to work in the outdoors or inside. I think we have all of that within us when we are girls. But over time, we have so much of that drummed out of us because we get these messages anytime that we look at a supermarket magazine that tells us 15 ways to lose 15 pounds. Anytime that we go shopping or look at TV and we see an ad, it's all about, you know, color the gray out of your hair. You know, there's all of this stuff. When I was working in the advertising industry, and I was told by some of my bosses when I wanted to be paid the same as the guy in the office next to me, when I wanted the same kind of respect, when I wanted to be bonused for bringing in a $5 million client, and I was told things like, you're asking for too much, you are too ambitious, you are a troublemaker. And so when we get these kinds of messages, I think that they can really ruin us. I think they can moderate us. And in a way, Lakshmi has been moderated, right? Lakshmi has changed herself. She has become a chameleon because that helps her in the environment that she's in. But Radha has never had any of that. And I wanted to maintain that purity in Radha. And you just know Radha's going to grow into an adult who is probably never, ever going to follow the rules, which I like. I like that because I am a rule follower and it's kind of fun to have a character who's not a rule follower.
Bad luck, girl.
Right.
So we don't have that much time left. There was one more question from Katie, who apologizes for being a question hog, but don't apologize. I was worried I would have to ask more questions. She says, what do you know now about novel writing that you wrote one, it took you 10 years, right? And then you've written 2 more, apparently. I only knew about the 1 sequel, but 2 more sequels. What do you know now about novel writing that you wish you'd known before you started?
Okay. So I have written the sequel that's going to be coming out in July of next year. I have not written the 3rd one, but I know what the structure of it is going to be. I know what the storyline is. And that one I'm setting in France because I'd like to go to France to write it. So you get to do that when you're a novelist. You get to set it wherever you want. And it's always best to go into the environment if you're going to be writing about it.
Yeah, hopefully their COVID cases start to go down, right?
Yeah, hopefully they're going to let Americans back in sometime soon.
Gloria wanted a question.
Wait, Dad, I'm still answering. So I think what I know now is that every character has a depth to them that makes them more real. And you have to figure out what that depth is. So you have to ask yourself, what does this character eat in the morning? What do they like to do in the daytime? What is their background? What was their family life like? What was the way that they found solace? What was the one thing they did that made them feel better? You have to actually answer these questions about almost every single character because until you answer that, you won't be able to pepper your entire novel with little anecdotes that feel real for that character. So I wish I had known at the very beginning the kinds of questions to ask and to write down these things about my characters. But the sequel came easily because now I know all of these characters. After 10 years, I know exactly what they're looking for and what their personalities are. When I start a whole new book again, it might take me a little longer, maybe a few years, because that's going to be a whole new set of characters that I'm going to have to get to know. And then I think another thing is a book is going to take as long as it's going to take. So don't rush it. I always wanted to rush it because I was always like, okay, now we're done, now we're done, now we're done. And the book is not done until people who know better than you tell you that it's done. I think it's really hard as a debut novelist to know when the book is actually good and ready for the public. I had an agent who would not go to the publishers until she felt that the book was ready. And she always said to me, Alka, you only get one chance at a debut novel. It had better be the best thing you can possibly make it, or you won't get a second contract. So I think time is important and perseverance during that is important. Oh, and a third thing I think I learned, and I think I owe my husband a great deal of credit for this, is that when you get a set of feedback, take the time to sit with it. Don't just read it once and then start working on your edits, or don't just read it once and go, well, that was a good effort. I'm putting that novel away and I'll never look at it again. No, think about what the feedback is. Go back to it time and again. Take some time away from it. Once you read it 3 or 4 times, you will understand what that reviewer is trying to tell you, especially if they're a practice reviewer, if they really know what they're doing, like an editor. Then I think you'll be able to make your book a lot better after you read it a 3rd time. Okay, Dad, what was your question?
Gloria or either Gloria or Victoria were having a question. She typed twice.
Oh, Gloria thanked me twice. Oh, that's sweet. Dad, were you reading the chat? I haven't even read the chat. I don't even know.
Yeah, the question I saw from Gloria was about the sister loving her older sister. If there was another question, I didn't see it. Gloria, if you did have another question, we do have 2 minutes left, so I want to be cognizant of that.
I like the video for Chris Mortensen. People are just sort of like walking by. I see people every now and then walking this way and then walking that way. I'm like, is anybody there? Hello.
All right. Gloria says she does have another question, and I think we have to make it our last one.
Okay.
Just because of the timing.
Sure, Gloria.
Go ahead, Gloria. I'll unmute you. Gloria, you're on the air.
Okay. I think I like the relationship between the younger sister and the older sister. I felt the younger sister, who had been the captain of her own life for such a long time, 13 years, if that's a long time, came to her, visit her, be with her older sister. She was a power struggler. They had a power conflict. She was spiteful, the younger sister. And then having that baby out of wedlock was a huge comeuppance for her. She met a circumstance that was bigger than what she was expecting. And that helped her become more humble. She went to live with the baby and continued to be a power struggler with the adopted mother of the baby, but ceased and desisted because this whole situation was bigger than her 13-year-old years could manage. Do you agree with that?
Yes, Gloria, I think that's a really good assessment. I think that's exactly what happened. There was a huge power struggle between those two. In fact, there are a lot of different power struggles between many of the characters. Parvati and Lakshmi are having their own power struggle, right? And then, of course, there's a power struggle between Samir and Lakshmi, especially when they find out, when he finds out that Radha is pregnant. but yeah, I think that that's a really good assessment on your part about the power struggle between the two sisters, and how, you know, Radha finally comes upon an obstacle that she cannot overpower. So when she does, by the way, when she does leave that baby, she wants nothing ever to do with it again. She doesn't want to have pictures of it. She doesn't want to know what happened to the baby. And so that's why I'm writing the third book, because Radha at the age of 35 is living in France as a perfumer. She has 2 little girls. She married a French architect. And that baby is going to come looking for her when he's old enough to know that he was adopted. And that is going to be a comeuppance for her, because, you know, like you said, this is a really hard thing for Radha to deal with, is obstacles that she doesn't know what to do with. Thank you. Thanks for your question.
Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you to Alka Joshi. I was so excited to find out that you weren't an actual henna artist, but a great author. I got the time to spend with you today. Don't tell us too much about what's happening in the follow-up books, by the way, because I think people want to read them. It's going to be a great TV series. Can't wait to read the 2 sequels that are coming up. I am so impressed. I mean, anytime anybody writes a novel, it's very impressive to me, but having you write this, having never written something before and having it be such a hit, it's very impressive. Thank you for being here with us today. I thought it was a great discussion. I think that you did a great job of making your own luck.
You read that article, huh?
Yes, I did. I highly recommend the article, by the way. It's in Vogue India. Is that right?
Yeah.
India.
Who knew that at 62 I would ever be in a fashion magazine?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think it's a great article. You did make your own luck. You did a great job through a weird time to release a book. Yeah, I think your father also said something. You quoted your father, or maybe it was your father quoting your mother, also saying that the past makes the present. And
Dad said that, yeah.
You did a great job of bringing that past to the present, and I think the book is very relevant today. And like you said, it's resonating with people. So thank you again.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you so much, Christine, you know, for inviting me. And thank you so much, everybody, just for listening and for liking the Henna Artist and putting your name on all of those library lists. However you end up reading it or listening to it, I am more than happy to share this journey with you. I think it's been really fun. And a big shout out to my dad, who gave so much information about what India was like in the 1950s in the book. And he's just tickled pink that he's got a daughter now who is teaching things to people. So he's like, ooh, you know, my progeny is now following in my footsteps. By the way, there, you know how there's Kepler's out here in, you know, right by Stanford, right? The big, fabulous community bookstore. They're having me teach 3 separate classes on writing. So writing, collaborating, marketing, and I'm going to be teaching all of those. They're coming up in late October. And if you're at all interested, I think it'll work for your time frame, because they start at 4 p.m. Pacific time. So I'll be posting those on Instagram, and Kepler's will definitely be sending their email list out to everybody about those. Yeah, so I hope you'll join me there.
I will try to send that to the people who are on the call, by the way. I love Kepler's. I'm from the Bay Area. Love Kepler's. Used to be a server at Cafe Baroni, which is right next door.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
Yes. Thank you again. I'm going to send the recording to everybody who was a part of this, just in case you want to watch it or share it. Thank you so much for joining, everybody. And thank you again to Alka Joshi for being here tonight. And we'll keep in touch. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. You are a very good interviewer.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.